Yeah, let's hear it.
What's up, friends, family? This is your guys here from Rio Revolution Church. We've got Pastor Adam, Marquiel, Tim, and me, Johnny. And, man, we're just doing another episode of Church Talk. And we just want to invite you guys to just engage with us. One of the things you guys have been doing is letting us know exactly some of the topics that you want to talk about. We're happy to do about anything. So just let us know in the comments. And we'll try to just talk about it, pray about it. We're in constant communication with each other, and just gives us opportunity to, since we're kind of doing this once a week, to fill you guys in kind of where our hearts are in certain areas. But today we're going to talk about how to lead your family in times such as this. So really just leading family. And I think this is kind of an open discussion. And what I like about it is I think all four of us come from different dynamics. So I feel like maybe we can come at it a lot of different angles that I think is going to touch a lot of people's hearts because of maybe the experience that God's given us, but also the words God's have given us. So without going too much further, guys, who wants to start us off?
I'll start off. I don't care to. Leading families is probably something I got to learn how to do because I got 5 kids, and so I'm still learning a little bit. But the one thing that God laid on my heart when we discussed this topic that we're going to talk about it was just being intentional with your family. When all this stuff first started happening and the kids were staying home, Rachel and I, my wife, we weren't as intentional as we are now. We just let the kids kind of do what they wanted to do and stuff and all that. And we noticed that there was a lot more bickering and a lot more fighting going on. But now we've gotten to a point where we're really intentional on what we do during the day. Right now, like 2 weeks ago, I had my boys out. We started working on the roof of my shed, and they didn't get inside, watch TV or anything like that, play video games until about 5, 6 o'clock at night. And we got to spend a lot of time together and everything. But then when we sat down for dinner at 7 o'clock, then we sat down and watched a TV show all together. And I've noticed since we've been very intentional about what we do, we have times that we go outside and that's all we do. We don't do anything else. We're coming together as a family. And I think that's one thing that we have been really hit on is just being intentional. And that's even with our quiet time and our prayer time with our kids, being intentional, like sitting down and setting that at this time, 8:30, we're doing a Bible study, or we're doing, or when we go to bed, I take Keegan to bed and I get to read to him for 15 minutes. Sometimes it's out of his Marvel Avengers book, and then sometimes it's from the Bible, and I get to be very intentional with him there. And so that's what I think, that leading your families during this time is you got to make sure you set times and periods that you're actually together as family and not just letting your family do whatever, you know what I'm saying? So that's one tip that I would say. And there's lots more that I think we could talk on. So.
Heck yeah. Tim, what you think?
Yeah, I think that's something, especially during this time, is just like Marquel said, being intentional, and we've kind of talked a little bit with our kids, kind of what's going on, and like Marquel's kids are a little older, and yours are too, Johnny. But I guess for us, we have a 7, a 5, and a 1 and almost 2-year-old. So we don't go into everything that's going on, but they understand that there's a virus going around, and that's kind of why we're at the house, and which we homeschool, so it's not a big difference with what's going on with us. But it has been nice, like just being able to just be at the house and help out with that, and really just, like you said, getting out. What's been awesome is we've been blessed with nice weather pretty much this whole time. There's been a few rainy days and a few cold days, so we've been able to get out and do things as family. And I think during this, especially during this time, like it's been really nice and really almost I guess it is a blessing that we're not so busy, you know,
Yeah.
like we're doing things, but we're not like running around like crazy, like
Yeah.
practices and work and school related stuff. Like we actually get to do family stuff and actually spend time. Like one of the things that Jenny did, which uh, she kind of gave the boys kind of separate areas of the house where they go and they go and have their own quiet time, like on a little beanbag or something, where they just pray. Like it's on the wall, kind of a guideline, not like exact words to pray, but it kind of asks them questions to kind of get their mind thinking on what to pray or how to pray. Because that's something that even Jesus had to teach the disciples what to do was how to pray. So I think that's something as parents, teaching your kids how to pray and what that looks like and yeah, just being intentional
It's
on
awesome.
things like that.
Heck yeah. I I've thought of this, like our kids are finally learning how to be bored. I don't, because when we grew up,
How to be
I knew it was like, I mean, I had two older brothers, so I had a little bit of advantage of, having brothers to pick at, or I had someone play basketball with me or whatever. But man, we lived in a time, I know you guys know what I'm talking about. You would stay in the woods or you'd stay out in the neighborhood all day, riding bikes. Parents didn't care. I mean, for the most part. I mean, my parents were pretty, but I think it's hilarious because I feel like these kids, they've never had to be bored. There's always something stimulating. There's always a TV, an Xbox, or something that's on.
Yeah.
There's always something to be. I mean, heck, all of their classes are on Chromebooks now. So
Right.
it's like they're learning how to be bored. But what I think is happening though is boredom's almost it's almost pushing creativity though. Out of the boredom, they're learning to be creative in the ways I feel like we had to. The other one of the kids, one of my guys was throwing a baseball at a tree. He had nobody to throw with at the time, and I was up doing something else, or I would have went out and thrown with him. But I'm just sitting there going, "That's awesome! Like that is awesome." Because even though it doesn't seem like it's very productive, it's just feeling this time of, I don't know, it's like simplicity. He's being creative, so it's like this boredom's. Now they're mad. They're coming in, and what can I do? Blah blah this, blah blah that. Can we go anywhere? No, the whole world's shut down, bro. You're just gonna have to enjoy it. Go do a run or something, But just switching gears real quick for me, I come from a different side of parenting. Obviously, some of you guys that know me and you guys all know my story, but I've got two my nephews. So one's through adoption, one's through foster. And I think one of the hardest things is sometimes you don't know what to do. And I really felt like God was sharing with me in my heart of it's okay to not know. You don't always, I feel like that's what happens with parents is sometimes we feel like we don't give them exactly what they need, and you start feeling that condemning spirit on you of just like, hey, I'm not good enough or I'm not doing well enough. But something like what you said, Marquiel, was just intentional. Your presence and being intentional in your presence and giving them love through just being there, I think is enough a lot of times. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like that I'm perfect, but what happens is I feel like maybe there's a lot of people out there, you have to grow into being a parent. I mean, if you didn't raise a kid from birth, you've got to grow in, because what happens is as a 31-year-old male, it's almost like I expect them to be at a certain place and they're not ready for it. So then I have to like turn around and go, you know what? Where is he feeling this like from? Where is he dealing with this? And I'm gonna be honest with you, half the time I don't know. So I think that lifts a lot of pressure off people, hopefully, I don't know, to say you don't have to know. You just be who you are as a person, as a man, as a woman. God said love him and love people. So then what do you do? How do you love your kids? You just love them. You do things for them. You provide the needs, right? You even give them some of their wants, because that's what you do as a parent. But I don't know. I guess that's my take as far as how to lead your family is you're never going to be perfect. We all screw up, right? We all make a lot of mistakes. I know my dad made mistakes, but here's the thing. My dad's mistakes never dictated like our relationship now. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, now that I am maturing, right? I'm getting a little bit more mature, and I'm seeing things are a lot more than going to the mall and all the other crap. They, go to Target and buy this or go play whatever. Like, I see even all my dad's mistakes actually made him better and made me better. So hopefully that makes sense. But
Hey, right there. You're talking about going to Target. Did any of y'all get the conversation of, like, if we went to Walmart or whatever, don't ask for nothing, don't pick up nothing, you ain't getting nothing.
Absolutely.
Did y'all get that?
all the time.
Oh man, I'm walking through the parking lot, wheeling and dealing, baby.
Oh, Dad's thing. Anytime, like, when I could get a toy, he was always like, "I will buy you 10 baseballs instead of that one toy," and I'm like, "Yeah, let's go!" Like, that was always my favorite thing. But sorry to interrupt. I thought that was fun.
No, you're good. That's pretty much, I guess just to recap what I was saying is just, you don't have to know.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're reading, you're trying to pursue it. God sees your heart. God sees your actions. And I think the biggest thing is what Marquiel said is the intentionality of just being there.
Yeah.
Being present.
And someone will know that what you're saying about like you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I try to do as a parent and even as a husband, because I think we're forgetting about also our wives, because we're all married here.
Yeah.
Because our family, we're supposed to be leading our wives as well during this. But when I make a mistake and my kids see me make a mistake, I go to them afterwards and I say, I am so sorry. Like, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that I'm not perfect and you're not going to be perfect, but I still love you and God still loves you and God still loves me, And so, and I really do that so that my kids can know that even when they get older, they're going to make mistakes as parents. They're going to make mistakes as a husband and as a wife, my daughter, when she gets married. I want them to see that they don't need to strive to be this perfect thing, but there's also that grace, and that God is always extending that grace to them. And as long as they're humbling themselves enough to make and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's something that we as husbands and as fathers, and Adam, I know you don't have kids, but you are a youth pastor, we should be willing to show that, hey, we're vulnerable too.
Yeah.
Mistakes, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Absolutely. I'll take it on that note. You said I don't have children, and I do have 4 cats. I don't know if that counts, but they're here somehow. But no, I mean, even I have a responsibility to my wife, and that's not it's not like the old ball and chain type thing, but I'm called first to lead her, before I lead anybody else. I'm called first to be a priest and a covering to her before anybody else. And that's hard to remember sometimes, because, this is our job. So we have extra. Every believer is called to be a priest and pastor to their own home, regardless if they're a pastor for an established church. We're all called to pastor our wives and children. It's not mistakable. When we first started talking about this topic, I tried racking my brain, and it's like, you can tell everybody to do a Bible study or mandate a prayer time, whatever. I was homeschooled growing up, K through 8th grade. Then I went to high school, but I remember having Proverbs as a subject in school, and then Psalms. The next, 1 month it would be Psalms, 1 month would be Proverbs, and then different books of the Bible. I'm very thankful for that. But at the same time, it was schoolwork to me. And I heard a quote that said, "You can't mandate love."
Amen.
And that's the truth. The government can't tell you have to love Jesus. A teacher can't tell you have to love Jesus. It's where he wins our heart. But a couple scriptures I wanted to throw in, and the first one was 1 Peter 5:2-3, and it's instructing. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's Peter instructing them how to lead the church. and lead the community. He said, shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight. Goes on through, it says, don't domineer those that are in your care, but instead be examples to the flock. And that's the best way that we can lead our family, is not by saying you have to do this.
Yeah.
As long as you have kids, guess what? They're your care, they're your responsibility. You were perfectly fine telling them, hey, we're gonna read the Bible today. We're whatever. I think that's good, because whether they like it or not, you know what, they're gonna be around the Word. But the biggest thing is, how can we be an example of somebody in love with Jesus? Because that's something that's not mandated. That's something that's replicated. I don't have children. Y'all do. But leading by example is better than any message or any lecture. But straight up just being in love with Jesus. And they can see when it's real. The same thing with our, like, I'll speak specifically to people that are married. You can't control what your spouse does, but if you love them the way that you're called to love them, you're being a picture of Jesus.
Amen.
I always use it anytime I do a wedding. I use Ephesians 5, and it talks, it's wives, submit to your husbands, then husbands love your wife as if it's your own body. So many times we miss that, and the guys get cocky. They're like, yeah, you've got to submit to me. But realistically, what God's telling them is, he's telling them both the same thing: submit to one another. So how can I lead my spouse? And that's by serving my spouse.
That's right.
I'm not always the best at that. Sometimes I have to be reminded the hard way. Sometimes I have to be reminded by failure. Other times it clicks right there in my brain, and that's awesome, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Or other times your wife reminds you.
That's why I'm knocking on your door. That's never.
Hey, I got good couches over here.
I know, but I would miss them. She's in the other room right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Might have to do some leading after this. But no, I feel like being an example, showing the love of God, and making sure that they know that they're a priority. That's been the hardest thing for me, just to be honest, especially being a pastor, is making sure that she knows that she comes before my job. Because I try to be dedicated. It's so easy for me to log, a lot of hours in a week doing what I'm called to do. And it's very, very easy to forget what I was called first to do. And I feel like we make that sacrifice and that trade-off all the time. But I'm not willing to, and pastors, we can't be willing to sacrifice our marriage on the altar of ministry. I mean, that's not what we're called to do. It's not. So if anything, that's not saying that you're going to have long nights or you're going to have long hours, or that it's bad to have those things. But we have to make sure that our wives and families know that they come first.
Yeah.
What about you guys? I mean, what's something you can not implement, but what do y'all see as something you can do that anybody can do, not just a homeschool family or not just a pastor's family? What's something that people can do on a day-to-day basis to help point their family towards Jesus?
You said something about being an example.
Yeah.
Like, how can I be an example? I think back to my parents. I have some really awesome parents. I've been blessed to have the parents I have. And I remember growing up and getting up in the middle of the night sometimes and just walking in. I don't know what I was doing, going to the kitchen, do what kids do when it's bedtime, doing anything to get out of bed. But I can remember walking in and seeing my mom on her knees at the couch praying.
Wow.
And just praying for people and praying for that people will come to Christ and praying for whatever.
Yeah.
And she wasn't to do it in front of me, but it was her natural thing. So I got to see her do that. So that was something that was instilled in me as a kid, is, man, spend time in prayer with the Lord. And I think that's something like when I try to do Bible study with my boys, it's like it turns into whooping butts, because that's when they want to play. It's when silly. That's when they don't want to be quiet. They don't want to listen.
Yeah.
And you have to be like, you don't want to just force it. I think it's more just, and that's where I struggle the most, is because I want to teach them the word. I want them to know it. I do want to force it in them. But I think if you do that too much, you can actually push them away. And so I think it goes back to what Adam said, is just living it out. Let them see it in you.
Yeah.
Let them see your love for it.
I grew up, my dad was a pastor, and, so I was at church all the time, man. All the time. It was even something I resented, even though I was a part of I loved going to youth as I got older because it was my thing. But just church on a Sunday, I remember resenting it, and how much time we had to spend there, or how much time dad spent there. And, Bible was a regular part of our schoolwork. But that was my mom. Mom taught it, she was the one that was getting us in the word the most. I remember seeing my dad study. He had a desk, and we had a little computer room for a office, whatever, but his favorite place to study was laying in the middle of the living room floor. So I remember seeing him in the word, and I remember seeing him study, but it was one of those things like, don't bother dad while he's doing that. So even though he was doing what he was supposed to, I remember a lot of dad's sermons. I remember a lot of his messages, but he wasn't the leader that got down on my level and got me into the word. I mean, that's not who he was. So I can look back at that, and, I admire the fact that he had a drive to study, and that he wanted to get in the word, but would have been so much more valuable to me for him to get on my level, where I was at, anywhere between 7 and 18 years old, 11 years there, and find out how I'm doing in the scripture, find out if I have questions, find out if I have, whatever. Because yes, like Tim, I got to see my dad get in the word, but it was more of a, can I sneak through the living room and not disturb him to get downstairs to go play PlayStation or whatever, more so than, man, dad's going after God. It was more like, I wish dad would go in the office so I could just walk through the house, one of those type things. That might sound selfish, but when I think about having kids, I don't want to be dad locked in the office, or when I'm studying or whatever. I don't want Emily to think, well, Adam's in the word, I can't bother him. I don't want to be that way.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for the example my dad set in ministry, but I'm not. That's one of the things I learned, what not to do, not what to do.
I'd like to just add in the fact of just being that example of. I always tell my kids, and I try to tell them all the time, that their relationship with God doesn't depend on my relationship with God. Because I think so many times, because me as a child, when I finally turned 12 and I was adopted by my family and my dad, who is a pastor, many times I thought I could skirt on the grace of my dad, So I get away with this because my dad's a pastor, you know what I'm saying? Which is not true. So
I feel like I couldn't get away with anything. I'm pretty sure my mom had a direct line to the Holy Spirit when I did something.
Listen, if you grew up watching Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, you're saved.
I always tell them, like, you have to build your own relationship with God, and however that is, however that looks, that you have to decide that. And then there's always a question that I just challenged my two older boys on. Noah's 12 and Caden's 11, and I asked them, and I was ready to prepare to tell them my answer to it, but what is it that makes them know that God is real?
Mm-hmm.
Because the reason why I asked them that is I know once here in the next year or so, their faith is going to be challenged.
Yeah.
If they don't know why they believe in God, then that's really going to be challenged. And so I've asked them, like, you got to find your reason. Now, both of them couldn't give a solid reason for it. They tried to say, oh, because I go to church all the time and stuff like that, and which is fine. But they have to really, really figure out why they believe in God. And that's all of us. Like my wife has to know that answer because her faith will be challenged. I have to know that answer because my faith is going to be challenged. And so I think that's something that we should, with all our kids, once they get to a certain age, is sit down and ask them, why do you believe in God? Not because I believe in God. Why do you believe in God? You know, so.
That's awesome. You know, that's funny you say that because I've taken that approach, and it's almost like it's the only thing I know what to do because I grew up in church. I know majority of you guys grew up in church, and I did not live like a Christian, even though I thought I was going to heaven or whatever was supposed to happen with me, right? Like I knew who Jesus was. Everybody believed in God, right? Uh, but I don't know. I just felt like you said, Adam, I just feel like it was mandated. So therefore it caused me to rebel, or I felt like if I just have to, it's almost like I love telling my boys, like, guys, y'all know that God loves you. And I pray that somehow that's been one of the hardest things, is not having actual church where my kids get to hang out with other kids, you know, because I can tell they're missing that. Yeah. And so how much more important is it for us to have church at home? Making sure we're sitting down in front of live stream, making sure that we are praying together. And I'm going to be honest with you, I mean, it's not easy. Again, you don't have to be perfect at it, but are you being intentional with it? But I've always told them, look, your relationship with the Lord has got to be yours. You know, I can't do it for you. You guys are at the age of accountability. I believe that. Like you believe, you know, morally what's right and wrong. You know, morally, you know, what you should believe. Yeah. Now, has God shown up in your life? Maybe the way it's shown up in mine, maybe not, because maybe the things that I've had to really, have to go through my personal walk, they're not going to understand. But again, if we're living our lives and they see you loving people, they see you pulling money out of your pocket and paying for the homeless person, you know, them seeing you pray and praying loud and praying out and worshiping, them seeing you turning the channel because you want to worship. I think that is what speaks volumes to them. But guys, real quick, because I think Zoom's going to cut us off in a minute and a half because I guess they're no longer doing that upgrade thing, and I don't want to upgrade to Pro because I have no idea how expensive that is. Final words. We've got a minute 20. Anybody?
Yeah. I think the most important thing to remember is that we're called to lead our family first. Whatever that looks like, whether it's showing grace, loving, sometimes it is preaching, sometimes it is being an example. But to me, it's loving and being who God called us to be.
Awesome.
I would say just like forget trying to be perfect, being the perfect parent or the perfect husband or wife. And just be organic about it and be intentional on what you do daily with your family. So.
Tim, last words. You got 10 seconds.
Yeah. See Christ in front of your family. Just let them see Christ in you.
Awesome. Guys, we appreciate it. We love you. And we'll see you next time.
All right.